Awesome. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. This is basically the first episode per se in our a series that we're doing about everything that you kind of need to know to prepare in order to apply to whatever pre-health track you want to do. This one, we're going to be focusing on the MCAT tips and tricks. So this is pre-med focused. Just to go ahead and introduce ourselves, my name is Landy. I'm a senior. I'm majoring in biology and minoring in Korean, and I'm on a pre-med track.
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Sebastian. I'm a co-coordinator for the Prepare Committee with Landy. I'm also a current senior and I'm majoring in biology, also on the pre-med track.
Hi guys, my name is Nathan. I'm a coordinator for the Apply Committee. I'm a senior as well, studying biology and philosophy on the pre-med track.
Hey guys, I'm Michael and I am in the Prepare Committee under Landy and Sebastian. I'm a senior studying MBB with a minor in sociology, and I'm also on the pre-med track.
Hey everyone, I'm Afsa. I'm a senior. I'm also on the pre-med track, majoring in human health and minoring in nutrition science, and I'm on the Apply Committee of PHA.
Awesome. So like I said, this is aimed towards pre-med students because it is the MCAT. If you are intending to follow a different track, maybe like pre-dental or some pre-pharmacy or something, you will not be taking the MCAT, and we have other resources that we can suggest to you. So feel free to reach out to us about that as well, but this session will be focusing on the MCAT. I think all of our peer mentors here have taken the MCAT already. Afsha, have you taken it? No? Okay, almost all of the peer mentors have taken the MCAT. Afsha, are you in the process of studying for it, or?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, hopefully we can provide a good range of perspectives for you. And yes, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat. All right, so yeah, so just a quick outline. We're going to be talking about when to take the MCAT, so kind of like a timeline if you're intending on doing a gap year versus no gap year. We're also going to be talking about what the MCAT covers, good ways to start studying and preparing, and also kind of putting that in the context of the bigger picture and the timeline for when you need to be studying and then when you need to take it. We're also going to look at like specific structure of studying, different resources that you can use, and finally just give some good advice about things to know about the MCAT. And throughout, we'll also be talking about our experiences and things that we've learned ourselves as we've gone through this process. So Sebastian, you want to take this?
Yeah, of course. So just to sort of start with the first topic here about when do people usually take the MCAT? So the answer to this question depends on whether you're doing a gap year or not, or gap years, which is also like technically an option. So if you're not doing a gap year, so that means like if you're applying to medical school during your fourth year, starting the application process as a junior in college, that's the no gap year option. You want to have the MCAT score you're satisfied with by early summer before senior year. So that means if you're applying, for example, the summer between junior and senior year, you want to have an MCAT score before those months in that summer. That means taking the MCAT at the end of summer, between sophomore and junior year through September before junior year. Or you can also do the January through May on the spring of that junior year as well. If you're doing the gap year option, that means that you have to take you need to have your MCAT score ready by the summer after you graduate. That first summer, you want to have an MCAT score ready by then. That means taking the MCAT again, whether that's like summer through September. I guess that would be the summer between your third and fourth year through your fall senior year, or the spring of your senior year if you're taking that gap year as well would be another option if you want to take that. 2+ gap years, again, following more or less the same sequence. You want to have the MCAT sometime before that summer where you're applying. So some of the options that we have are summer versus school. So this is like another consideration that you want to take into account. If you feel like you need a little more structure where you want to incorporate MCAT studying into a preset number of credits during college, if you feel like that would be something that would benefit you, then it's best to study during a semester, whether that's the fall or the spring, right? But if you feel like you want to just focus and like take a deep dive on MCAT and just focus solely on that, the summer is the best option. So I think it's depending on like what mentality you have and what works best for you. Something to analyze there. And then give yourself enough time to take it in case you have to take it again. So like you want to sort of have quality checks like this where in case things don't go your way, which is totally fine and happens all the time, you do have some margin of error where you can still take it and have a score the earliest possible. Because again, we'll discuss this later, but the earlier you apply for your med school application cycle, the better, or the higher your chances are to getting it. Anything y'all want to add for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I can say I took my MCAT. I'm not doing a gap year, knock on wood. So I took my MCAT in January. For me, that felt like it was a good option just because it really gave me that winter break to just focus on the MCAT and not have to worry about like literally everything else that I'm doing between like school and research and things like that. And then that also gave me time to kind of say like, oh, if I need to or want to retake or push back if I feel like I'm not ready, I could push back to like March, April, even May if I really needed to.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of the fall study schedule, like fall junior year in the case where you're not taking a gap year, because as we'll see later, like studying for the MCAT, like your performance and the number of hours you put in sort of increase the closer you are to the deadline, just because you start to sort of as you see the deadline closer to you, you try to put in more work. And so you end up putting the most work when you're the most free in that schedule, which would be the winter break. So I think that's why that schedule works so well. But for some other people, the summer schedule also works.
Yeah, I want to give the perspective. I actually took it over the summer. That was a summer where COVID kind of canceled everything. And so I think the benefit of that was it required less time in terms of the number of months. So you can kind of really pack everything in there, obviously, because you tend to be freer over the summer. But like, everyone said, there is no right or wrong way to do it. There are just different options. And, whatever option you choose to take is totally valid, and it should be based on, your own preferences.
Awesome. Afsha, is this your slide?
We put it in there just to kind of go over what the MCAT covers and how it's scored. In case anybody doesn't know, there are 4 sections on the MCAT. The first is the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. And the second is the critical analysis and reasoning skills. The third is the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems. And the last is the psychology and sociology section. So each of these are scored on a range from 118 to 132. And the overall MCAT total is scored from 472 to 528. So 528 is a perfect score. And on average, people who take the MCAT tend to do around like 501, I believe. But yeah, this is just a general outline of how the MCAT is structured and how it's scored. Yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, like this order is not the order that you take the sections. It's Chem Phys and then Cars and then Biochem and then Psych Soc. So yeah, and what they always do is that whenever they have a group of people taking the exam, right? They always move the average to be 500. So that's why that's kind of in the middle there. So they do like curve the MCAT to say. I mean, don't like rely on it, but they do always change that average to be 500. So.
Oh, a note on that. So it's not curved on based on how well people do on the MCAT. It's predetermined even before everyone takes the MCAT based on like their own basis of how difficult the MCAT exam is or something like that. So yeah, it's not about how other people do, just focus on your own self.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you're making there as well. It's like there's this misconception that your score is dependent on the performance of other test takers within like a certain time range, but it's the perceived difficulty that the test taker, like the people that make the MCAT, assign to the test you take and others take on that date.
Yes. Anything else here? Awesome. All right. Okay. Yes. So, how do you start studying? I mean, the first things first, you have to consider what's your budget. A lot of the MCAT prep courses and things that you can you get involved in to start studying for the MCAT can get very expensive. There is a fee assistance program. I don't really know too much about this. Sebastian, if you want to talk more about this.
Yeah, so this is actually an amazing resource for like people who are more socioeconomically disadvantaged, to say the least. It's like essentially this program from the AAMC that allows an applicant to have a reduced fee for MCAT. So instead of being the usual 350, 300, which one is it? Somewhere in that range. I believe it's $300 to $350. Instead of that, it goes down to like $150. So it's a significant reduction in costs. Additionally, you get all the AAMC resources. That includes all the question packs, the biology, the cars, the chemistry question packs, the physics question packs, all of it. You get all of their free full-length exams, which includes a 1 sample test and 4 graded exams. And I think you additionally get like access to other like flashcards and other resources within the AAMC content. And even better, I would say that the fee assistance programs, its relevance mostly has its impact on your application fees. When it comes to time to apply to schools, you get 20 free applications. So the cost really adds up, and that's like something else to discuss like for applications, but getting 20 free schools is insane. Like the value that you get from this program. And if you can apply to it, I would definitely go for it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. So yes, that is certainly an option for you. Otherwise, so there's several different ways to go about studying for the MCAT. One is doing some sort of prep course. So usually a lot of people will go to like Kaplan or Princeton or something along those lines to get study materials and get access to like lecture videos, books, flashcards, question banks, practice tests, things like that. And it really, especially when it comes to those prep courses, it really depends on how you study best that you should like choose your course. So perhaps if you like being taught, they do have like classes or like tutoring services available, things along that will provide you more direct guidance that could really help you. Or if you would rather study on your own, for me, that was what I wanted to do, just straight up, read through the books myself and try to learn everything on my own. That is also an option. They have like self-paced courses like that. And a lot of these courses will also include like practice tests and the AAMC practice test materials as well, is particularly in Kaplan. So those are definitely things to look out for. The AAMC tests are notorious for being probably the closest thing you're going to find to the actual MCAT. So that's certainly something to consider when you're looking into if you want to take advantage of some of these courses. One thing you can do is if you find a student group that's selling like this MCAT Kaplan course, that'd be great. Usually they're cheaper there. But yeah, like I said, it really depends on how you feel like you study. There are other programs available, like UWorld provides a lot of practice questions. Blueprint also is a great place to get practice tests, and some of our other peer mentors can talk about those. But yeah, actually, if you want to talk about those now, that would be great.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. So I, just like Landy, I also self-studied. And again, it depends on how you think you study best, whether you want to go the course route or self-study. But I think UWorld helped a lot. I used UWorld, Blueprint, and the AAMC materials. So I think a general recommendation is AAMC materials are closest to what you will actually see on the MCAT. So I left those towards the end, especially the practice tests. And I started with UWorld and Blueprint for their practice tests as well as practice problems. And I will say the caveat is they are a little harder than what you'll see on the MCAT, but it's a good way to kind of get you into the right mentality and start with kind of the tougher questions and work your way in, and then you can move to AAMC. But again, it depends on how you study best. I will recommend for everyone to take a diagnostic test before you get into all of the study materials, because yes, I know like most people's scores are bad. It will probably be bad since, you know, it's the first test you're taking, but I still recommend it because it'll help you get used to what the test is going to be like. And you can get that through Blueprint or any other source you find online.
Awesome. Oh, Asha, did you want to say something?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for MCAT studying is making sure you have a set schedule. I think that's something I really struggled with, like creating a set schedule for the entirety of however long I was studying and sticking to it. There's a website online called self-study, something like that, selfstudy.org for the MCAT, that'll make a study schedule for you based off of what materials you have. There's also MCAT Bros, which you could reach out to on like Instagram or their website, and they can make you a schedule for like $200.
Yeah, so you do have a lot of options, and it's really good before you kind of start this process to do your research and really look into what would work best for you and what you feel like you would benefit from the most. To note, if you do need to register to take the MCAT, for 2022, the registration will be opening actually within the next week, October 13th through 14th. So it'd be really good if you guys would take advantage of that. Be sure when that registration opens to be there on time because it fills up fast. I remember when I was registering, I was on time and somehow, so what they do is they put you into a waiting room and then gradually they let people sign up for their test dates. I was like, what, 3,000 on the wait list or something, but it was fine. I still got the test date I wanted. So even if you see something like a number that's really, really high, and especially if you're a couple minutes late, you might see a number that is even higher than 3,000. Don't panic, you'll still get your test date. Things will work out. So, but it's just something to know. And I didn't know going in, so I kind of freaked out at that point, but it turned out fine. So, but yeah. Anyone else want to talk about anything on this slide?
I just wanted to add one more thing. When we were talking about the planning, it's definitely not necessary to have a plan. Like some people do not work well on like minute representations of what they have to do every single day during like many months. But it is definitely necessary to have macroscopic goals. Like what I mean by that is like definitely have an idea of what you want to accomplish in like a week or at least a couple of weeks or a month. If you're not the type of person that works on like set like daily schedules, like, oh, I'm going to do 5-hour blocks here. Okay, so it's like fine either way you do it.
Sebastian, you want to take this one?
Yeah, of course. So then let's sort of look at the bigger picture here. So what do timelines for studying look like? So the typical schedule options are 3 months to 6 months. There is such thing as too much time. Don't try to do this like start studying like freshman year or something like that. No, that's definitely not necessary. Allow yourself time to digest the content you're learning and just focus on learning. if you're a person who's like earlier in their undergraduate careers. Things will come with time, like as they go. So like I stress that because there's definitely studying fatigue. You don't want to be like studying for many months. Allow time for trial and error process to figure out what works best for you. Again, since this is a process that varies so much among individuals, you definitely have to try it yourself to see what works for you. Like we had talked about earlier, the MCAT bros. Afsa mentioned that this is a great way to have someone, look at the resources you have and also build a schedule for you. We can go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, so looking specifically at those 3 and 6 month study lines, if we're doing the 3 months, ideally you want to aim for like 40% of time within those 3 months should be dedicated to content / going through books. Going through books can look and like, it could be really different for many people. It could be just reading the books. So you're just focusing on going through the content as fast as possible. It could be reading the books and annotating them. It could be reading the books and making detailed notes about the book. So like there's many ways to approach it, but it depends on exactly how you want to do that. My personal recommendation for that is that assuming you've taken most of the classes for, preparation for MCAT in terms of content, you're already coming in with a foundation about a lot of things. It's not like you're coming in with a blank slate. So when you start reading books and taking detailed notes, a lot of it is like stuff you're very familiar with. And so you're essentially wasting your time if you're not doing if it's not targeted to you. So I recommend sort of going through the books as fast as possible and focusing on the things that you know the least. So for example, for me, that was the psych-social section because I haven't taken that many classes in that area. So that's the book that I focused most of my energy on. But the other stuff was more like, okay, let me just read through it and try to remind myself of these things. Because as we'll see as we go through this presentation, your expertise when you go to the MCAT, when you go to take it, comes from practice. It does not come from your ability to read books and annotate it or take other notes on the side. It comes from how well you could practice and how well you can remember the things you are getting wrong, which is another key detail. So that's essentially what a 3-month schedule would look like. 40% dedicated content review and then 60% of practice. Practice can come in the form of full length, the question banks, the AAMC material, the resources that Nathan also mentioned, UWorld as well as Blueprint are great options. And then a 6-month study schedule where you have a little more wiggle room. You can spend a little more time on content review. 50-50 makes perfect sense in that case because you have plenty of time to focus on practice and sort of gauge those skills that you need to do well on the test day. Yeah, anything else that we want to add here as well?
Yeah, I just kind of want to reemphasize practice is literally the most important thing that you can do here. The passages in the MCAT, it's passage based. So they give you a passage and then you answer questions about that passage for the most part. Like they do have a couple kind of offside questions that'll just be just the question. But besides that, mostly it's you read the passage, you answer the questions. So the better you can get at reading those passages and doing quick reading comprehension and then answering those questions in the way that they kind of want you to, the better you will do at the MCAT, especially because so much of the content that you need to know can kind of be discerned from the passage that they give you, or they'll give you a graph and say read this graph and then put it into the context of something you learned. So yeah, you definitely don't need to finish the content, and it doesn't need to be super in-depth either. It's better if you just kind of get the general picture and then be able to apply it in more detail later.
Yeah, just to briefly add on, I think one important thing to note as you're going into the study process is how the test gives you information. So they throw really seemingly complex passages at you, but once you take the test and you go over your wrong answers, you'll realize it's not actually that bad, that they kind of want you to learn the skill of looking at complicated passages, but realizing that you actually have the information and knowledge to answer those questions well, even though the passage is complex. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And to Sebastian's other point, when you're doing content review, I highly recommend do not take like super specific notes on everything, because there's so much information in the Kaplan books, and it's not like they're going to ask you like some very, very specific equation, super long equation in the book. Like they may not ask that. So I think really focus on big picture and then dive deeper into the areas that you're not sure about, like Sebastian said.
All right. So yeah, as we've mentioned before, there are a lot of different study resources that you can use. If you're looking for books, Princeton Review, Kaplan are really good places to get them, although they can be kind of expensive. But what you can also do is look for secondhand things, maybe people who who have already taken the MCAT and are maybe willing to like sell you the books or let you use them or something. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Those are really good. But again, these books can be really, really detailed, and you absolutely do not need to know all of that detail. So definitely like use the books as kind of like a guideline for what you need to know, and then supplement it with practice. Another thing that's really popular is Anki. So these are spaced repetition flashcards. So basically, you do the flashcard, and then based on whether you get it right or wrong, so you can determine like, okay, I felt like this was hard, or I felt like this was neutral, or like really easy. And it'll give you the flashcard again after a certain time based on what you thought the difficulty of that flashcard was. So if you thought it was really hard, maybe it'll give it to you again in 1 minute. Or if you thought it was really easy, they won't give it to you again for another day. So things like that. And a lot of people really like using this, especially for like the larger facts and concepts that you need to know. For me, I really liked using it for the physics equations, because the physics section is largely as long as you know the equations, and you do need to memorize the equations. As long as you know those, you can answer the questions. So the physics equations and the amino acids are mainly what I really liked Anki for, but a lot of other people use them to review. Maybe they'll take notes or something and add that into Anki and test themselves later. So different things like that. Also, speaking of equations, there are many equation sheets on the internet, or you can make your own, anything really to help you learn those equations and be able to just recall them on test day. And then finally, Khan Academy, which actually it is not ending on September 30th, they're extending it, but they have a lot of really good practice for the MCAT, including a 300-page psych-soc guide. Personally, I like Khan Academy for their CARS passages. I think they have really strong CARS passages. The Chem Phys and the Biochem are kind of meh. I feel like they can get a little too detailed and be a little too difficult, but they are definitely a good free resource that you can use.
Yeah, I was gonna just add one thing here. So for content, like since most of the content comes from like your review of the books, reviewing the books is not going to allow you to retain a lot, just straight up, because it's a lot of like passive, it's a lot of just passively going through the materials, and you need it to sort of get into this uncomfortable state where you're trying to force your memory to recall things. And that's what's going to allow you to retain. So a good way to tackle content and at the same time try to maximize your retention of that material is to pair the content, which is just looking at the books the way that you choose to, with Anki, with those pre-made decks that are already on the internet. So at some point in your content phase, incorporate Anki so that you can start retaining things, right? And then later it'll serve as a mechanism to also retain the things you're getting wrong, because that's where your increments and points will come from. It's not going to come from reviewing the things you're amazing at. It's going to come from reviewing the things you're terrible at, because that's where your gaps are, and that's where you need to capitalize sort of that material. Yeah, so speaking of practice resources here, there's a lot. And this is the key phase of MCAT studying. So there's the practice tests, right? As we mentioned, the ones that come with the fee assistance program, where you can just buy yourself from the WMC. There's 4 tests, which are graded. You get a grade that is very representative, I would say, of how you will do on your actual test day. And a sample test, which does not have a grade, but it's a great way to start understanding and sort of simulating that environment that you'll experience on test day. There's the section banks or the Q banks that I was talking about, where there's just dedicated question banks for the biology, the biochemistry, the psych soc, and the physics within those AAMC materials as well. There's the official guide to the MCAT. Again, it's like strategies and other stuff. It's like a nice book that comes with that. The question packs. UWorld, I would say UWorld is one of the best resources, probably gold standard for MCAT prep. It's actually amazing. It's a question bank that has over 2,500 different questions in all the areas. And even it's even a little more specific, because besides just having the 4 broad sections we see on the MCAT, it has like dedicated biology, dedicated biochemistry, dedicated physics, dedicated general chemistry, organic chemistry, right? And all of that is super useful and sort of allowing you to target where you're sort of making the most mistakes. Blueprint, again, great resource for full lengths, not for Q banks, for full lengths. Blueprint. Kaplan, Princeton review practice tests are also really good. And then the biggest thing with practice is to not take reviewing lightly. The work does not come from you sitting down for 7 hours and simulating the test environment. Your growth will come from you taking probably like double the amount of time to review that. So do not take review lightly. That's where your points and your growth will come from. Make sure you're spending the most amount of time and energy reviewing and trying to understand why you're getting those questions wrong. Yeah. And then Jack Weston is great for cars. This is like a longitudinal thing that people, what they usually recommend is that you start doing this day one, that you start practicing for the MCAT and build that habit all the way throughout your review phase. Because cars is just a matter of practicing as much as you can. It's a skill that can be built. Some people, what I've seen usually is that some people are just like innately amazing at it. Typically readers, avid readers who've been reading like their entire lives are just like innately amazing at cars. I was definitely not that guy, I'll tell you that, but I was able to build it by just building that habit and doing it like every day as much as possible. Khan Academy is great for reviewing content, has great videos, simple instructions and material. And they also have some pre-practice passages for the cars section.
All right. So yeah, just one thing to know, is just stay positive. The MCAT is a big thing and it can be super stressful and it can feel really overwhelming, but don't worry, like you're not going to know everything and that is okay. Unless you want to, I don't know, even if you wanted to become like an MCAT god and only do MCAT for the rest of your life, like you're still not going to know everything. This is a super hard exam. And honestly, it's literally just about, how you approach it and how you keep that positive mindset, and everything will be okay. Really, even if you don't know a question, oftentimes you can reason through it anyways. They give you a passage and part of it is the comprehension and the critical thinking. So you can definitely practice that. And also, just be realistic with your timeline. MCAT is not the only thing in the world. You're also doing school. Maybe you're doing research. Maybe you're doing, I don't know, other clubs or activities, or maybe you're scribing. So just be cognizant of what you're actually able to do and what you're able to accomplish, especially when you're creating your timeline. And just make sure that you'll be the most ready to take your test whenever you feel like would be best. Have confidence, do what works best for you. And of course, take some breaks. It's not just about trying to grind through the studying. And, cramming for the MCAT is definitely not advisable. I should know because I did it. I didn't leave my apartment for a week. So just make sure you're spreading everything out. You're starting early. That's why we advise people start months in advance. And just, make sure that you're taking care of yourself in order to do better on the actual test.
I just want to emphasize one thing here. Mainly like the fact that there's easy ways to integrate various resources here. For example, Anki is a very powerful tool to integrate it with UWorld, for example. So like, let's say out of the 2,500 plus questions that you can find on UWorld in all the various areas that it covers, let's say you have like out of those 2,500, you get like 800 wrong, right? Those 800 questions will get you the points you need to get a great score. But it's not about doing the question. It's about, did you understand why you got it wrong and how you can get it right the next time? And if you are not able to answer those questions after reviewing, then you haven't done a thorough enough review. So the way to do that, to like emphasize that you're doing that, make sure you're doing that, is to pair it with Anki, which is a very powerful tool if you pair them correctly. So when you get a question wrong, for example, what you could do is simply go to the explanation that is very thoroughly explained and put in very simple terms by the UWorld people, and ask the question, wait, why did I get this wrong? And what piece of content do I need to get this question right the next time? Then just screenshot that piece of content, make it into a question stem, put it on Anki, put that piece of content on Anki, and use that card as your anchor to make sure you don't make that same mistake again. Because that's, again, how you capitalize on those wrong questions where your growth and good scores will come from. So I just wanted to emphasize that, like, the best way to study for this is to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna go to the next slide so we don't run out of time here.
This is an ironic slide to go after that last slide, but this is talking about the importance of the MCAT for your application. So medical schools look at a lot of things, absolutely a holistic review of who you are and your application, but arguably academic accomplishment shown by your MCAT and GPA is one of the most important, if not the most important thing that is often considered. So why the MCAT is important is because it shows to the medical schools that you're capable and you're a good student. You're somebody who in the future would be able to pass the board licensing exams. So, you know, they're investing in you and you have to invest into this exam so that, you know, you can get into medical school. But it's not the only thing. They also consider community service and leadership experience, clinical experience, research, which is not required, but it does provide helpful experience if you do it in something you're really passionate about and can talk about well. Reminder that your application is holistic, but your MCAT score is a very important part. Does anyone have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just add, all of these subject areas or content areas are really, really important. And we will also be having lectures on that. So be on the lookout. That will be occurring approximately every 2 weeks, starting from this week. So yeah, be on the lookout and hope to see you there.
Yeah, so before I get into the details here, the purpose of this slide is to kind of give you a snapshot into the process after you get your MCAT scores back, and it's just to get you thinking about what scores you would want to look into getting. And of course, like, one thing I want to say is there's no magic number when it comes to the MCAT. Everyone's standards are different. I know everyone, of course, wants to do their best, but it's important to know that there isn't really a magic number. Like, if I get this score, then I will get into medical school. It's really unpredictable, especially as I'm going through the admission cycle now. I could tell you that it is really unpredictable, you know. So there is no magic number, but I do want to give some numbers just to kind of help orient the way you want to study and the scores you hope to get. So one thing that's important to consider is that the average accepted MD student MCAT score is around a 510 to 511, and the average accepted DO student MCAT score is a 504. So DO versus MD, that's like a difference in title, but it's still going through a medical program to become a doctor. So these are two different standards. Like, if you want to go for DO, which is a lower MCAT score average, then you would want to aim around a 504 and above to consider yourself competitive for medical schools. And if you're looking to get an MD, aim for around above a 510, and that'll make you competitive for medical schools. And once you get your MCAT score back, they're actually uploaded automatically to AMCAS. So there's nothing you need to do on your end in terms of submitting it into AMCAS. You have a number that's generated once you start your application, and it automatically uploads to the application. And again, like there's no magic number. Just try your best, you know, and I would encourage you to start looking into MD or DO schools now, and just kind of looking through schools in their mission statements, what schools you really like, make like a very brief list and look at their averages for their MCAT, because that could be a good way to start to think a little more about what score you want to get, and that'll help tailor your study experience and make it more specific, and you'll get more out of it. So I'd recommend looking into those schools you're really interested in, look at their MCAT scores. And again, even though there's no magic number, if you want like a guideline in terms of what schools to apply to based on your score, I would try to apply to more schools within 2 to 3 points of your MCAT score. Of course, I definitely encourage you to apply to reach schools that are above that range, or even undershoot for schools that are below that range, which you could consider as reach or safety schools. Those should definitely be in play, but definitely consider most of the schools you apply to within the 2 to 3 point range of the MCAT score that you get. And of course, your list of schools will change. Maybe you have a target score and either you get above or below, which is totally fine, and just adjust your schools of application based on what you get. And just for another number to keep in mind is that the average number of schools that students apply to for medical school is 16. So it's a lot more than the Common App and undergraduate application process. So that's just another thing to keep in mind.
Awesome. So this is all of our contact information here. If you guys have any questions outside of this, you're more than welcome to ask us and shoot us an email. You can also look on the PHA SharePoint website. It has all of the peer mentors there, and anyone you'd like to talk to, you can just schedule an appointment with them and talk more about all of this stuff. So we do have about 15 minutes left. So yeah, we're gonna do some Q&A. So if anyone wants to speak up or send a question in the chat, we'll be happy to answer. And yeah. Yes, Bahar.
So I was wondering, like for undergrad, you know, like the best schools are like the Ivy Leagues or whatever. But I don't really have an idea of like what the best schools are for medical school. So what would you recommend me looking at to kind of see like, you know, what kind of schools I should be aiming for? Because I don't know if it's I don't think it's the same as the Ivy Leagues. I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, I can answer that. If I'm not mistaken, feel free any of the peer mentors to correct me. I believe actually the Ivy Leagues are also some of the most competitive medical schools. I mean, there are definitely a handful of non-Ivy League schools like NYU that are like extremely competitive, but I don't want to say there's like tiers, but if I had to say like the most competitives of IVs and plus are usually like MCAT scores like 518 plus or 520 plus. So that could be like a number to keep in mind. Again, I don't want to like say a specific number because you could get above a 520 and not get into those schools. So this is just like a frame of reference for the averages. But I believe that's like the gist of like Ivy Leagues and the most competitive med schools.
Yeah, I can also add, so AMCAS has something called the MSAR. It's like MSAR. So basically look that up. It's like, I don't remember how much it is, but it's less than $30-ish. But through that, you can actually search all the medical schools that you want to. And is it only in the United States? I feel like it is. But yeah, thanks, Sebastian. But you can look through the MSAR, and they have basically details on all of the M schools, I believe, in the United States. So MCAT score, they'll talk about, you know, demographics of who got in and who didn't. They also have like percentages about how many students got interviews, things like that, and details about the schools themselves. So if you're, yes, definitely, I would highly recommend getting the MSAR and looking through that to learn more about what kind of schools you can apply to. Any other questions?
While we're waiting on other questions to pop up, I just want to say, like, we threw a lot of information out at you guys, and a lot of it, it's probably hard to ingest and process all of that at once. And so, like, if you have follow-up questions, or like, for example, you're getting ready to study for the MCAT and you want to create a study plan, like, you can come to us and we can help you with that. So we have like office hours, walk-in hours. You can come to the PHA office and any of the peer mentors can help you. And you can also, like Lanny said on our SharePoint, schedule an appointment with one of us. And it's like a one-on-one appointment. We can help you, help answer your questions about the MCAT and also help you structure your study schedule as well.
I can also like quickly address like oh, actually, let's answer that question first, and then I'll talk about it.
Ooh, does anyone have one? I have one, but it's kind of messy.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing then.
Oh, Akshay, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes. This is my schedule from MCAT Bros. They just kind of broke it up based on what chapters they think I should read and like practice every day. And then on my own, I'll go in and do Anki as well. So yeah, that's how they broke it up. The first like greater half is for content review, and then they've mixed in some like full length exams. And then towards the end, when we get more full length, we get towards the end, this is like break for final season. And then it's mostly AAMC material, which is like the gold standard of what you should be studying and what you should definitely purchase. And that's like the material we use at the end to study. And yeah, this is for January test date. Does that make sense? Anything else y'all want to see?
How many months was that, Afsha?
So this is starting from like basically October to January, mid-January. Yeah, so like 3 to 4.
All right, any other questions? Does anyone want to take this one about manageability and mental health?
Yeah, I can contribute a bit because I think part of the process is like at the beginning, it's hard to manage like this and like other things going on in life. And that's just something that you kind of get used to once you start studying. For me, what helped was I kept like a list of like absolutes that I have to do. Like I have to like eat on a good schedule, do not skip meals, work out at least like once a day. Like those are things that I was like, no matter what, even if you miss a day of MCAT studying or you miss like some time, it's okay. Like that's why you should be very flexible with your schedules. And like Michael said, sometimes if you don't want to do like a daily schedule like that and you want to do weekly to keep it more loose, that could help. That's what I did. And I think at the beginning it's stressful when you miss a day or two, but as you get settled in and learn, like I think having a list of like things where you're like, I'm not going to give up like working out or like eating good or stuff like that, I think that helps. But everyone has their own strategies. That works for me specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna add something to that as well. I think it's manageable. I think problems start to arise when you drop what you like. Why? You don't need to drop what you like. Like, if you find joy in being with your friends, continue being with your friends and hanging out with them. If you find joy in like playing a sport, keep playing a sport. Don't start dropping things because of this. Just add it to whatever you're doing already. That's what keeps you sane and keeps you going through, the rigor of this prep.
And actually, in a way, it kind of like it helps you more than it might perceive to hurt you, because if you burn out, and that will happen if you like give up things you like, that'll affect your performance. So like burning out is something that's common in MCAT, and it could end up affecting your score. So if you like don't drop the things that you like and really like, take your time with these things and grow through it, like that can help you avoid burnout.
To piggyback off of that real quick, we mentioned this earlier, but there is such thing as too much time spent studying. So, if you elongate your timeline by constantly pushing back your test date, or, just giving yourself like an extended like 9 months or like a year study period, I think that's also not ideal in that it kind of weighs on you for that long. So I think, condensing it into like that 3 to 6 month period that we recommended is overall like probably beneficial for your mental health, so that you can kind of like get it done and have that kind of be it. And then I see another question here. Do you recommend studying a little from each subject every day, or just finish a specific subject by a certain time? In my opinion, in my own experience, I kind of split up the subjects. So like I'll do like each week, for example, I'll study like a little bit of each subject, maybe like a chapter or two from all the different subjects. I think that generally tends to be the more common approach, because it allows you to like, retain material from all the different subjects, as opposed to like doing one at a time. But other peer mentors can give their input.
Yeah, I'll add just the thing you need to know is that whatever you study first, you're gonna probably start forgetting it by the time you actually get to the test date, just because there's so much information that you need to go through, and like there's so many other things going on, and like that's okay, like don't worry about it, just know that you're able to go back and review it, and make time to do so. For me, I actually started at first doing like a little each day, and then halfway through I switched to just trying to get through all the books as fast as possible. So I think it really depends on like how you like to study and what you think is best for you. Yeah, so just depends on the person. But Bahar, did you have another question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so someone mentioned like that there is such thing as having too much time to study, so like you kind of shouldn't go beyond like that. Is there anything I can start studying like before, not necessarily studying, but like maybe memorizing amino acids, or like, just something to get ahead, so I don't have to do like everything within the six months?
I mentioned this earlier in the chat, but the best thing that I think you can do, like if you're not, at the point where you're ready to study for the MCAT, which means like, you've taken your prereqs, you kind of know what your timeline is in terms of when you want to apply. So if you're before that stage, like chances are you're probably taking classes like physics or OChem or biochem, human phys, all the classes that you would take in preparation for the MCAT. And, knowing the content, having the foundational knowledge is obviously a big part of the exam. So the best thing, in my opinion, for you to do right now is to just focus on doing well in those classes and like trying to like master the material then, because it saves you so much work down the line if you already have a good understanding then. And I think another thing is like, and we mentioned this as well, but a lot of the questions are passage based, and they require you to have strong critical thinking skills where, you read through like a mini research paper essentially, and you have to extract insights from that. So for example, if you're involved in research, really trying to be involved in like reading literature and analyzing research papers is another way that I think you can kind of prepare for the style of questions that the MCAT is going to throw at you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, like, and again, like, I don't know how long you have until you're planning on taking your MCAT, but doing things too early can also be really harmful because you will forget them. And in terms of classes, like, definitely human physiology, biology 336 is so helpful for your biology section. It covers a large portion of it. Also biology, biochem, I don't really know too much about the chemistry biochem, but the biology biochem is definitely aimed for the MCAT. And then other classes like psychology, like Psych 111, Psych 110 are good to take, but definitely not required. And then Sociology 101 or 230 would be good to take as well. Those Psych and Soc are probably the easiest ones that you can like study on your own. So if you don't have time to take those classes, that's fine. It's just kind of like something to add on if you do think you have time. So yeah, that's 5:30. So we're probably going to go ahead and wrap up. Does anyone have any like closing statements you want to say before we conclude?
Yeah, I can quickly give a statement, I guess. But yeah, I would say like definitely the studying for the MCAT is so personalized. It's not similar to like classes where like everyone has similar study habits. Like definitely start to learn how you study best and tailor it specifically to your weaknesses and really personalize it, because you'll get more out of it than just following what someone does. Maybe someone has a similar study style to you, and you could follow that, but I would recommend like try to make it as personalized as possible to your strengths, how you study best. And I think, you know, you'll all do great.
Yeah, I think another thing too is like, you're not alone. Like a lot of people are also taking the MCAT. So, you know, it's really great if you can like find some people who are also kind of going through the same thing. And if you want to study with them, great. Or if you just want to like go and rant to them, that's always fun too. So yeah, you're definitely not alone. It's a process, but like we said, you will get through it and everything will be okay in the end. So yeah, so thank you so much for coming out. This is the official end of the session. Sebastian, if you want to stop the recording. But we